Envision an infinite expanse of sand dunes beneath an unyielding sun, reaching toward the horizon as far as vision can perceive. Now exchange that desert for a realm of stone and ice, elevated within the secluded Indian Himalayas, encircled by serrated mountain summits and churning mist, rests Rupkund Lake, a modest frozen water body harboring a deeply disquieting truth. Picture yourself hiking across these frigid, barren elevations, directed solely by the faint illumination of daybreak. As you near the water's edge, you detect something peculiar under the ice. Through the translucent exterior, you observe bones, dispersed human craniums, and skeletal frames hauntingly conserved unaltered for ages. Yet this is not the consequence of one solitary calamity. These vestiges belong to individuals who perished at distinct moments in history, occasionally divided by centuries, even millennia. It is as though the lake has silently collected existences across epochs, attracting them inward, only to disclose their presence much later. Initially encountered by a forest warden in 1942, Rupkund, now frequently termed Skeleton Lake, has captivated scientists, historians, and adventurers equally. Moreover, the additional information they have revealed, the more peculiar the puzzle grows. Hereditary investigations demonstrate that the individuals who died here did not originate from one location. Some arrived from South Asia, others from as distant as the Mediterranean region, divided by thousands of years. Notwithstanding decades of inquiry, one query persists unresolved. What attracted all these individuals to such a remote, uninviting location? And why did none of them ever return? This evening, we will scrutinize the lasting enigma of Rupkund Lake. We will observe what contemporary science has disclosed, the predominant hypotheses that have surfaced, and the unsettling recurrence that continues to resist clarification. A frozen lake that appears to claim lives repeatedly across time, continents, and cultures. Therefore, settle comfortably, perhaps lower the lighting, and accompany us as we investigate Rupkund Lake, a location where the terrain is mute, but history communicates profoundly. Rupkund Lake resides elevated in the Indian Himalayas, positioned over 16,000 feet above ocean level within the harsh territory of Uttarakhand. Concealed among stony peaks and glacial pathways, this isolated lake is seldom frequented. Despite its limited dimensions, merely 40 meters in width and no deeper than 10 feet, accessing it demands a strenuous 5-day journey through thick woodlands, alpine pastures, and precipitous, rocky trails. It stays frozen the majority of the year, melting briefly during warmer seasons to expose its alarming secret. The surroundings encompassing Rupkund Lake render survival intensely difficult, nearly unachievable for those unready for its severe climate. The area withstands piercing cold, powerful gusts, abrupt violent tempests, and swift meteorological shifts. Major plant life, predominantly alpine grasses, minor shrubs, and resilient wildflowers, can survive the sparse, oxygen-deficient atmosphere. Animal existence is similarly restricted, comprising only specialized creatures like snow leopards, Himalayan tahr, musk deer, and high-altitude avian species. These demanding circumstances clarify why Rupkund has long been regarded as lethal and unreachable, and why indigenous shepherds, despite awareness of its presence across generations, quietly cautioned one another to evade this hallowed yet disconcerting place. Beyond these shepherds, the lake stayed mostly unfamiliar to the remainder of the world. It was not until 1942 that Rupkund Lake entered communal awareness. Hari Kishan Madwal, a British forestry guard assigned to monitor these distant mountain inclines, discovered himself meandering near this obscure lake while charting the severe Himalayan topography. As Madwal neared the lake border, he noted something unsettling. Pale formations scattered among the rocks at the water's periphery, capturing the sunlight unnaturally. Advancing nearer, a shiver traveled along his spine as he comprehended his observation. Human bones, skulls, rib enclosures, leg bones, arm bones, and even mandibles lay revealed to the mountain air, partly immersed under the icy liquid. Initially, Madwal presumed he had encountered the consequence of a recent disaster. Perhaps devotees were captured unaware by a sudden storm, or voyagers overwhelmed by harsh mountain circumstances. Yet upon inspecting the bones meticulously, it rapidly became evident these vestiges had been present far longer than merely a few seasons. Eroded, whitened, and scattered, the bones had plainly endured numerous severe Himalayan winters. Following Madwal's startling account, investigators and researchers shortly traveled to this distant lake to discover further details regarding the puzzle. What they discovered was far stranger and more intricate than anyone envisioned. Instead of merely a small number of skeletons, they found hundreds of persons scattered entirely around the lake border and resting beneath its lucid, shallow waters. Males, females, juveniles, all seemingly struck down abruptly without apparent cause. No garments, armaments, or personal possessions remained to offer immediate hints regarding the identity of these individuals or their demise. Because of this uncanny finding, Rupkund Lake became commonly identified as Skeleton Lake. Information regarding the location swiftly disseminated, seizing global imagination. Initially misidentified during the 1950s as missing Japanese World War II troops, later proof entirely refuted this hypothesis, intensifying the puzzle. Still, despite countless scientific explorations and archaeological examinations, the lake persistently protected its secrets closely. Who were these individuals? Why had so many assembled at such a distant and uninviting location? And perhaps most perplexing of all, what instigated their abrupt, unexplained deaths? To start disentangling these enigmas, it assists to observe not merely contemporary scientific hypotheses, but also the narratives and convictions of the individuals who have inhabited near Rupkund for generations. Long before investigators arrived at the location, native communities possessed their own justifications for the peculiar site at the lake. Stories profoundly woven into the structure of their folklore and heritage. One of the most ancient and persistent narratives involves an archaic monarch named Jastaval. As per mythology, King Jastaval was journeying across the Himalayas with his expecting queen alongside numerous attendants, performers, musicians, and combatants. Their objective was to reach the sanctuary of the goddess Nanda Devi, an extremely significant deity in the region. The monarch aimed to venerate the goddess and request her benedictions for his unborn offspring. Yet something regarding the king's opulent procession provoked Nanda Devi's anger. Some villagers state it was because the voyage was excessively lavish, deemed disrespectful to the humility anticipated by the goddess. Others believed the queen personally violated local conventions by nearing the sacred location while expecting, which traditions during that era strictly prohibited. Whatever the precise rationale, the goddess became profoundly offended. In fury, she released an abrupt hailstorm upon the travelers. Substantial hailstones approximately the dimensions of cricket balls descended from the sky onto King Jastaval and his complete assembly. With no trees or caverns for refuge around Rupkund, the king, his queen, and everyone accompanying them had nowhere to conceal and were incapable of escaping. Yet the narrative of King Jastaval is not the sole legend regarding Rupkund Lake. For generations, the lake has been intimately associated with religious journeys to the shrine of the goddess Nanda Devi. Each year, villagers and devotees embark on a challenging trek across steep mountain passages and unpredictable climate to reach the sanctuary elevated in the Himalayas. This pilgrimage is an examination of faith and perseverance, and finishing it is thought to bestow blessings and protection from the goddess. However, not every pilgrim returns securely. Over time, stories spread regarding those who journeyed into the mountains and never reappeared. Locals spoke of pilgrims who might have unintentionally fractured traditions, selected incorrect routes, or unknowingly exhibited disrespect. These narratives led villagers to believe the bones scattered around Ropkund belonged to these lost pilgrims, penalized by celestial displeasure. As awareness of the bones expanded, the lake developed a reputation as a location to be both dreaded and revered, a stark reminder of the perils linked with provoking greater powers. For decades, these indigenous mythologies supplied the primary justification for Ropkund Lake's eerie puzzle. Nevertheless, once scientists started closely inspecting the location, a vastly distinct and far more intricate portrait surfaced. When Ropkund Lake was initially discovered, investigators originally believed that all the skeletons belonged to casualties of one tragic incident. Perhaps a religious expedition gone awry or travelers unexpectedly captured in an extreme mountain storm. For decades, this simple explanation seemed rational. However, recent scientific investigations have drastically changed this comprehension, exposing complexities that nobody predicted. Indeed, National Geographic approximates that between 500 to 800 individual skeletons are visible at Ropkund Lake, with the genuine number presumably higher because of some vestiges being interred beneath rocky fragments, lost under shifting sediments or eroded by weathering and human disturbance across the years. This remarkably elevated figure emphasizes not merely one isolated catastrophe, but rather the cumulative misfortune of countless groups of travelers who ventured into this distant Himalayan region across centuries, each ultimately encountering a similarly tragic destiny. Scientific inspection to uncover this puzzle commenced during the early 2000s, when DNA examination remained quite novel and limited. Initial tests during that period concluded that the skeletons belonged exclusively to South Asians, all of whom died around the year 800 AD. Investigators hypothesized that these persons might have accidentally plunged through fragile ice, resulting in sudden tragedy. Early proof indicated a combined group of males and females, predominantly aged between 18 and 35, alongside bones from children, delivering a straightforward yet incomplete depiction of occurrences. However, recent progressions in DNA technology and radiocarbon dating have drastically altered these initial determinations, disclosing a considerably more complicated situation. In 2019, a team of geneticists, archaeologists, and historians from esteemed institutions like Harvard University, India's Birbal Sahni Institute, and hereditary researchers in Hyderabad revisited Ropkund Lake. They intended to utilize sophisticated radiocarbon dating and DNA testing to ultimately resolve the lake's long-standing puzzle, hoping the bones would distinctly demonstrate the identity of these individuals and their fate. However, the outcomes they discovered were far more complicated than anticipated. Advanced examination disclosed something very astonishing. Ropkund Lake was not the location of one solitary tragedy, but rather the site of several separate disasters distributed across nearly 1,000 years. This groundbreaking investigation thoroughly examined 38 skeletons, affirming that these remains belong to distinct groups from broadly different historical eras. Of these, 23 skeletons possessed South Asian ancestry. Yet even among these persons, there existed distinct groups divided by centuries. Some dated back to the 7th and 8th centuries, while others belonged to approximately the 10th century. This finding shattered the earlier presumption that the remains originated from one local catastrophe. Even more unforeseen was the discovery of another group of 14 skeletons from a much later period around the 17th and 18th centuries, who possessed clear genetic connections to distant Mediterranean territories, specifically the Greek island of Crete. Investigators were astonished because no recognized historical association existed between Crete and this distant Himalayan lake. Supplementary genetic examination also identified skeletal remains connected to Southeast Asia, further enlarging the geographical puzzle. These findings raised significant unanswered queries regarding why such diverse groups of individuals from distant regions, divided by continents and centuries, repeatedly concluded at this isolated and harsh mountain location, all encountering similar tragic conclusions. Despite intensive inquiry, scientists still do not entirely comprehend why these different groups of individuals traveled to Rupkund, or how they all encountered their mysterious fate. To better comprehend these astonishing findings, Harvard investigators collaborated with Indian archaeologists to conduct more detailed archaeological surveys at Rupkund. Specialists from the Birbal Sani Institute examined soil specimens and organic materials around the lake, hoping to discover additional clues. Geneticists from Hyderabad continued their detailed DNA analyses, affirming the diverse mixture of South Asian, Mediterranean, and Southeast Asian origins. Several hypotheses have surfaced from these extensive examinations. One popular justification is that Rupkund was a significant religious pilgrimage site across many centuries. The Himalayas contain numerous shrines dedicated to various deities, and Rupkund Lake might have been one of these sacred destinations, repeatedly attracting pilgrims despite the perils involved. Another hypothesis proposes that Rupkund lay along ancient mountain commerce routes connecting India, China, Tibet, and Central Asia. Merchants or nomadic groups traversing these difficult paths might have accidentally strayed from safer routes, perhaps selecting shortcuts or attempting to escape extreme weather, unknowingly wandering into hazardous circumstances at the lake. Detailed examinations of skeletal injuries supplied evidence supporting these hypotheses. Numerous bones displayed indications of severe trauma consistent with lethal hailstorms, reinforcing the concept of violent meteorological incidents. However, other injuries indicated different calamities such as avalanches or accidental descents, demonstrating that Rupkund observed multiple fatal occurrences rather than merely one. Additionally, some investigators propose disease outbreaks could have contributed, as travelers debilitated by illness might easily surrender to the harsh mountain environment. Another perplexing aspect was the notable absence of personal possessions or significant cultural artifacts. Investigators discovered only minor items like fragments of clothing, bamboo parasols, footwear, shell earrings, and basic wooden objects. No clear evidence of armaments, valuable trade goods, religious relics, or personal valuables existed. This deficiency of artifacts suggests that these victims were unexpectedly and tragically unprepared for whichever destiny awaited them. Ultimately, scientific evidence from Rupkund strongly indicates multiple separate tragedies transpired at this distant Himalayan lake involving diverse groups of travelers from vastly different origins and historical eras. Despite these significant discoveries, the central puzzle still stays unresolved. What repeatedly attracted individuals from different continents and across centuries to this isolated Himalayan lake where they all shared the identical tragic conclusion? For numerous years, the leading justification for the deaths at Rupkund Lake was a catastrophic hailstorm. Investigators originally supported this concept because of distinctive cranial injuries which corresponded with impacts from substantial hailstones, some potentially as large as cricket balls. This justification aligned neatly with indigenous folklore, particularly the mythology of King Cambyses and his entourage, who were said to have been struck down by hail. However, recent scientific scrutiny has raised uncertainties regarding this hypothesis. Although severe hailstorms do occasionally occur in the Himalayas, critics argue that storms intense enough to cause such widespread fatalities across different groups and eras would be extraordinarily infrequent. Additionally, Historical records and local traditions elsewhere in the region rarely describe hailstorms resulting in mass casualties. Given these concerns, scientists have explored alternative hypotheses. A particularly plausible scenario involves exposure and hypothermia. Rupkund Lake's elevated altitude location renders travelers extremely susceptible to rapid temperature declines, abrupt snowstorms, or freezing precipitation. Without appropriate garments or shelter, individuals could swiftly surrender to extreme cold, disorientation, and exhaustion, conditions that might explain the scattered distribution of remains around the lake. However, this hypothesis still fails to clearly clarify why so many travelers from different backgrounds and historical eras would select to assemble at such a harsh and isolated spot where survival would have always appeared improbable. Perhaps the most astonishing hypothesis arose from recent genetic findings, suggesting that some skeletons might be connected to Alexander the Great's missing reconnaissance parties. Approximately 326 BCE, Alexander's armies reached northern India, dispatching scouts into distant Himalayan passes to discover routes for expansion. Some historians speculate that isolated detachments of these scouts, disoriented and missing, might have perished near Rupkund Lake. This hypothesis would explain the unforeseen Mediterranean hereditary markers discovered among some remains. Yet, this intriguing hypothesis stays speculative with no definitive archaeological or textual evidence directly linking Alexander's troops specifically to Rupkund. A more contentious justification is that some deaths were intentional, perhaps related to religious ceremonies or deliberate spiritual sacrifices. Given the proximity of Rupkund to sacred pilgrimage routes, it's conceivable that certain travelers intentionally journeyed here as an ultimate demonstration of devotion or sacrifice. Historical records confirm that some cultures practiced ritualistic deaths or self-sacrifice. While challenging to affirm conclusively, this hypothesis could explain why there exist so few personal artifacts or possessions at the location, suggesting preparation for a final purposeful journey. For completeness, another hypothesis occasionally considered by investigators is water poisoning caused by bacterial contamination such as cholera or toxic algal blooms. Historically, outbreaks of waterborne diseases or exposure to poisonous substances could rapidly incapacitate and kill large groups, especially travelers already weakened by the arduous voyage. If groups had consumed contaminated water from Rupkund Lake, it might explain their sudden and simultaneous demise without clear indications of physical violence. However, modern testing of Rupkund's waters demonstrates no evidence of such toxins or pathogens presently, rendering this hypothesis challenging to verify conclusively. Additionally, some have suggested the lake might have been filled over time by avalanche deposits from even higher elevations, potentially delivering bodies from elsewhere downward into the lake. Yet, this scenario encounters considerable skepticism. The probability of numerous separate groups of travelers being positioned even higher in the dangerously inhospitable mountains above Rupkund is extremely slight. Furthermore, the relatively intact and undisturbed condition of numerous skeletons is inconsistent with having been transported downward by powerful avalanches. These factors render the avalanche deposit hypothesis intriguing yet improbable, further deepening the lasting puzzle surrounding Rupkund Lake. Ultimately, today's investigators generally believe the truth behind Rupkund Lake's tragedy likely combines elements from several of these hypotheses. Rather than one single justification, the location presumably observed multiple unrelated incidents across many centuries, including lethal meteorological events, hypothermia, avalanches, intentional ceremonial sacrifices, and perhaps even missing groups of ancient explorers. This combination of scenarios would explain both the diverse origins of the victims and the mysterious circumstances surrounding their deaths. Presently, Rupkund Lake encounters a fresh set of issues, threats vastly distinct from the storms or disasters that once struck here. After centuries of being concealed and isolated, contemporary human activity has started to impact this unique location. One of the greatest threats today is tourism. As Rupkund Lake has become more broadly recognized, the number of visitors has considerably increased. While many tourists approach the location respectfully, the rise in pedestrian traffic has begun to damage trails and disturb the delicate environment encircling the lake. Even worse, some visitors collect bones or bone fragments as keepsakes, causing irreversible harm and permanently destroying important archaeological evidence. Across the years, vandalism has also become an issue. Bones have been relocated, impaired, or deliberately reorganized by visitors, potentially removing critical hereditary information and context that could have assisted scientists better comprehend the lake's mysteries. Another major concern is climate change. Rising temperatures in the Himalayas are causing glaciers and ice around Rupkund to melt quicker than ever before. As the ice melts, it reveals more human remains each year. While this exposure might provide investigators more opportunities to examine the location, it also leaves the bones vulnerable. Without protection from ice, these remains rapidly deteriorate, further jeopardizing scientific efforts to properly analyze and preserve them. These challenges raise significant ethical questions as well. Scientists and visitors alike must contemplate whether it's appropriate to disturb or handle these human remains. After all, these bones belong to authentic individuals who tragically lost their lives centuries ago. Discovering the correct equilibrium between scientific curiosity, historical preservation, and respect for the deceased continues to be a key ethical challenge at Rupkund. Because of these threats, scientists, conservationists, and local authorities emphasize the urgent necessity for improved protection, stricter regulations, and careful management of the Rupkund Lake location. International collaboration and local stewardship are viewed as essential strategies to safeguard the location for future generations without harming its historical value or disrespecting those who perished there. Ultimately, protecting Rupkund Lake extends beyond simply preserving bones or uncovering historical puzzles. It concerns safeguarding a location of human significance and ensuring that those who lost their lives there are remembered and respected. Despite ongoing efforts to preserve and comprehend the location, numerous significant queries regarding Rupkund Lake stay unanswered. One major puzzle is why individuals from so many different places and historical eras concluded at this distant Himalayan destination. Investigators are still uncertain why travelers from Europe, the Mediterranean region, Southeast Asia, and various parts of India all visited this difficult-to-access destination. Some specialists suggest that Rupkund might have possessed an important spiritual or cultural significance that we do not entirely comprehend yet. Others have offered more unusual concepts, such as the lake perhaps being perceived as a sacred healing location similar to other famous historical sites globally. In this scenario, travelers might have journeyed to Rupkund hoping for healing, explaining why there exist extremely few belongings left behind. If these travelers were already weakened by illness, the harsh circumstances could have easily led to their deaths. With climate change causing ice around Rupkund to melt, scientists anticipate to uncover more remains and artifacts. They hope innovative technologies like sophisticated DNA tests, chemical analysis that reveals people's diets or hometowns, and ground scanning radar will assist deliver clearer responses regarding the identity of these individuals and their presence. Investigators desire to discover whether these travelers intentionally performed pilgrimages to Rupkund, whether they were merely lost, or whether perhaps the location formerly possessed special significance that's presently forgotten. Rupkund has also inspired some more imaginative hypotheses. For example, some individuals mention observations of unusual lights or unidentified flying objects in the Himalayas, suggesting extraterrestrial or paranormal justifications, though there's currently no solid evidence supporting these concepts. Another interesting yet unproven proposal involves the existence of ancient commerce routes or forgotten exploration missions that might have connected faraway civilizations. While these hypotheses lack scientific proof, they demonstrate precisely how intriguing and thought-provoking Rupkund's puzzle continues to be. Local investigators, historians, and international scientists are presently working together intimately to carefully document and protect Rupkund Lake. They're digitally mapping every bone and artifact they encounter, constructing a detailed historical record. Simultaneously, investigators are paying close attention to local traditions and oral histories, understanding these could retain valuable clues. Presently, the individuals residing near Rupkund possess mixed emotions regarding the lake. They retain a profound reverence for it and stay mindful of its importance in indigenous legends. While increased tourism delivers new economic opportunities, villagers are often concerned about disrespectful visitors, disturbing the tranquil atmosphere, removing bones as keepsakes, or causing unintentional damage. Elders frequently remind younger generations of Rupkund's cultural importance, ensuring respect continues despite contemporary challenges and international attention. As more secrets are disclosed at Rupkund each year, investigators stay hopeful that improved technology and continued collaboration will eventually resolve the lake's puzzle, ultimately clarifying why individuals from numerous places separated by immense distances and centuries repeatedly journeyed to this isolated Himalayan lake only to encounter the identical tragic conclusion. Envision an infinite desert topography extending. It is the year 525 before the Common Era, and the sands of Egypt's western desert glimmer under the noonday sun. Across this barren terrain marches an immense Persian military force. 50,000 regimented troops advance in flawless arrangement. The sunlight reflects keenly from their burnished bronze armor. Vivid standards flutter softly in the arid desert wind. Horses and camels plod forward steadily, stirring delicate clouds of golden dust, their riders assured and dauntless. Commanding this formidable contingent were trusted generals designated by Cambyses Sikka, the determined Persian monarch and offspring of Cyrus the Great. Having already subdued Egypt, Cambyses aimed to cement his supremacy by seizing one of the antique world's most hallowed locations, the Oracle of Ammon, situated deep inside the remote Siwa Oasis. Cambyses himself stayed behind in Egypt, charging his commanders with achieving triumph. Yet as this powerful Persian army travels deeper into the unrelenting desert sands, something unexplainable transpires. The soldiers, their armaments, livestock, provisions, all disappear without any justification or clue. No survivors ever come back, no scouts deliver news of their destiny. And despite centuries of seeking, no artifacts or remnants are ever located. It is as though the desert itself silently consumed an entire military host, bequeathing history one of its grandest unresolved puzzles. Yet how precisely does a complete army vanish without leaving behind even one solitary hint? Armies leave impressions, encampments, damaged weapons, proof of their passage. Yet here, nothing was ever unearthed. Could the severe desert circumstances alone have utterly eradicated Cambyses' colossal force? Or did something else occur within the immense silent sands? Remain with us as we delve further into this historical enigma and investigate other ancient mysteries that still perplex historians today. Settle back, unwind, and allow your inquisitiveness to lead you as we proceed with this voyage into the unknown. The imagery you will observe here will furnish context and detail, but they are not vital. Therefore, whether you are watching intently or simply listening, you will not forfeit an instant of this captivating journey. Now, let us commence. Cambyses II assumed authority approximately 530 years before the Common Era, inheriting one of history's grandest empires from his celebrated father, Cyrus the Great. Imagine receiving an empire so extensive it stretched from the banks of the Indus River in the east to the coasts of the Mediterranean in the west. Yet Cambyses, aspirational and resolute, was not content with mere inheritance. He desired more. Soon his gaze turned toward Egypt, the fecund and ancient land renowned for its enormous wealth, rich culture, and historical importance. In 525 before the Common Era, Cambyses acted swiftly to conquer Egypt, sending his armies to march upon its frontiers. Egyptian opposition, while courageous, swiftly fell before the seasoned Persian forces. Within a brief period, Cambyses secured victory, crowning himself as pharaoh sovereign over the vast Nile Valley. It was a remarkable conquest, but Cambyses' ambition was not merely to govern Egypt. He sought to establish unquestionable authority. At this juncture, Cambyses' attention shifted toward an obscure yet immensely significant place deep within Egypt's western desert, the Oracle of Ammon at Siwa. Nestled among palm trees and limitless sand dunes, Siwa was no ordinary desert oasis. It housed one of the ancient world's most esteemed oracles, believed by many, including Egyptian pharaohs and foreign kings, to be the literal voice of the deities. Rulers journeyed great distances, braving harsh landscapes simply to receive wisdom and validation from the oracle. Its priests interpreted signs, dreams, and omens, guiding monarchs through crucial decisions and solidifying their legitimacy. To Cambyses, however, the Oracle of Ammon represented a potential threat as much as an opportunity. As a foreign conqueror crowned pharaoh, Cambyses confronted persistent skepticism and resistance from Egyptians who questioned his right to rule. If the oracle were to speak against him, Cambyses' legitimacy could readily disintegrate. But if he could capture or neutralize it, he would effectively silence any remaining opposition. It was not merely a religious objective. It was a symbol of authority, legitimacy, and power. Yet why would he hazard so much to control a single oracle? To him, the Siwa oracle was more than just a temple in the desert. It was a key to securing Egypt's loyalty completely, to demonstrating his authority above both people and gods. To accomplish this final step, he assembled a massive army, dispatching them westward into the dawning sands, unknowingly initiating one of history's most mysterious disappearances. With his mind firmly set on capturing the Oracle of Ammon, Cambyses carefully selected 50,000 of his most seasoned and experienced Persian soldiers, men accustomed to difficult terrains, harsh climates, and relentless battles. To navigate the notoriously treacherous western desert, he enlisted skilled Egyptian guides, familiar with the intricate patterns of dunes and oasis paths that crisscross the sandy expanses. This was not a hastily assembled force. It was a well-equipped, expertly planned expedition designed to withstand the harshest conditions imaginable. Imagine this massive force stepping steadily into the boundless desert. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers, animals, and supply caravans moving across endless expanses of sand, driven by confidence and unwavering determination. Each day, the desert challenged their endurance with relentless heat, shifting sands, and exhaustion. Under the blistering sun, soldiers' armor grew hot to the touch, reflecting a harsh glare that made visibility difficult. Yet they pressed onward, driven by the promise of victory. Nights brought freezing temperatures, further exhausting the soldiers. The desert, an unforgiving landscape, had claimed many lives over centuries. Yet Cambyses' army marched steadily forward, confident in their numbers and the expertise of their Egyptian guides. But as days turned into weeks and weeks stretched further into uncertainty, Cambyses and his commanders back in Egypt grew increasingly uneasy. No scouts returned to report on their progress. No messengers appeared with news of their whereabouts. This disciplined army, experienced and organized, had ceased all communication completely. Yet no signs emerged from this massive force. 50,000 soldiers, horses, camels, and equipment. There was only silence. No signal fires lit on the horizon. No signs of camps or trails were found. Soon it became clear something inexplicable had occurred. The mighty Persian force sent by a king eager to solidify his grip on Egypt had somehow vanished. Swallowed whole by the sands they sought to conquer. Over time, their disappearance became a chilling mystery. Soldiers who once stood proudly beneath fluttering banners, horses and camels laden with provisions, experienced guides who knew the desert's every path. All of them simply disappeared without any trace, leaving no bodies, artifacts, or even faint evidence of their passing. But what truly happened to Cambyses' army beneath the desert sands? Could a natural event alone account for such a complete disappearance? Or was there another hidden factor at play waiting silently beneath the dunes? The earliest and most famous account we possess of Cambyses' lost army originates from the ancient Greek historian Herodotus. Often called the father of history, Herodotus wrote about this incident approximately 75 years after the event, describing a vivid and dramatic scene. According to Herodotus, the Persian army was suddenly caught in a violent sandstorm that erupted from the horizon. He described the storm in striking detail, comparing it to a towering wave rising from a sea of sand, crashing down upon the soldiers and swallowing them entirely. Herodotus claimed that the entire army, soldiers, animals, equipment disappeared in a single moment, completely buried beneath the sand, leaving no clues. The story quickly took root, captivating generations of historians and explorers with its dramatic imagery and mysterious nature. But even as vivid and compelling as Herodotus's account might be, some questions remain. Could a single sandstorm, no matter how powerful, realistically erase an entire army of 50,000 men without leaving behind even a small artifact or bone fragment? While desert sandstorms can indeed be powerful enough to reshape landscapes, many historians remain skeptical that nature alone could fully explain the army's complete disappearance. Even so, Herodotus's account remains the most widely accepted explanation, primarily due to its vivid detail and ancient origins. It stands as a compelling yet somewhat incomplete historical account, leaving historians and researchers to grapple with lingering questions. Could nature alone explain such a complete disappearance? Or does Herodotus's story hint at something else? A hidden element to this ancient mystery waiting silently beneath the desert sands. Over the years, historians and explorers have continually been intrigued by the mystery surrounding Cambyses' lost army. Could there still be evidence hidden somewhere beneath Egypt's shifting desert sands? One particularly promising search took place in 1996, led by two Italian archaeologists, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione. They conducted an extensive survey in the area near the Siwa Oasis, where Cambyses' army was believed to have vanished. Carefully excavating beneath the hot sands, the Castiglione brothers uncovered artifacts that immediately sparked excitement in the archaeological community. Fragments of ancient weapons, jewelry featuring Persian-style craftsmanship, and even human bones scattered among the dunes. Initially, these findings seemed like the breakthrough everyone had hoped for. The weapons closely matched styles known to have been used by Persian soldiers, and the jewelry bore intricate Persian-inspired designs, appearing consistent with Cambyses' era. The discovery quickly drew international attention, as historians speculated that after nearly 2,500 years, the mystery might finally be solved. However, as archaeologists conducted deeper investigations and more rigorous tests, serious questions emerged. Radiocarbon dating and thorough laboratory analysis of the bones and artifacts revealed surprising results. Instead of dating back to Cambyses' time around 525 before the Common Era, the tests indicated the finds belonged to the Roman period nearly 5 centuries later. The realization was disappointing, quickly dampening enthusiasm and returning archaeologists to the starting point in their search for answers. Despite this setback, efforts to uncover the truth continued. In the following decades, archaeologists turned to increasingly sophisticated technology. Starting around 2000, satellite imagery from NASA and other agencies provided high-resolution images of Egypt's western desert, allowing researchers to closely examine the region from above. Ground-penetrating radar, a technology capable of detecting buried objects and structures, was deployed on several expeditions. International teams combed various areas around Siwa, hoping for even faint traces of the army's remains, metal objects, buried weapons, or disturbed terrain. In 2009, a detailed expedition led by Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass and funded by National Geographic explored the so-called Great Sand Sea, a massive, treacherous expanse of desert dunes stretching between Siwa and the Nile Valley. This team meticulously mapped and searched specific routes the army might have taken, combining satellite data, ground radar, and careful archaeological surveying. Despite these thorough and high-profile searches, again, no definitive traces, no bones, armor, or equipment were found. The ongoing failure to uncover evidence, even with modern technology and expert exploration, has left historians perplexed. Could the unforgiving desert conditions alone fully explain the army's complete disappearance? Or might answers still lie quietly buried beneath the shifting sands, waiting for the right moment or technology to finally reveal them? Over the years, several theories have emerged attempting to explain what truly occurred to Cambyses' lost army. Each theory is plausible in its own way, offering a possible explanation for why an entire army vanished without leaving behind even a small clue or artifact. One commonly discussed theory is betrayal. Perhaps the Egyptian guides who Cambyses relied on to navigate the treacherous desert routes purposely led the Persian army astray, steering them into dangerous, impassable territory as an act of subtle rebellion. Such deliberate deception has historical precedent. During Alexander the Great's campaigns, local guides occasionally misled armies into ambushes or inhospitable terrain as acts of resistance or sabotage. This historical fact adds credibility to the idea that Cambyses' guides might have intentionally led his soldiers into a dangerous or hopeless situation. Another plausible explanation involves hidden environmental hazards such as quicksand or unstable terrain beneath the shifting sands. Desert regions like Egypt's western desert can harbor terrain that is deceptively dangerous. Historical accounts from various desert expeditions note that soldiers, caravans, and even entire groups of travelers have disappeared when unknowingly entering terrain that can quickly engulf them, leaving no visible trace behind. A third theory is an ambush by local desert tribes or nomadic groups familiar with the terrain. Perhaps these groups attacked and eliminated the army quietly, then removed any evidence to hide their involvement. Historical ambushes were common, like when Roman General Crassus lost thousands of soldiers to a devastating ambush by desert-dwelling Parthian forces at Carrhae in 53 before the Common Era, suggesting such tactics were not uncommon. Finally, there is a simpler but equally compelling theory: navigational error. The harsh conditions and endless expanses of sand dunes could easily disorient even the most experienced guides and soldiers. History notes many armies losing their way in vast deserts or large caravans becoming lost, wandering aimlessly until exhaustion and dehydration overcame them. In fact, Alexander the Great's army once suffered significant losses due to navigation errors in desert conditions, underscoring how easily such mistakes could occur even to disciplined, experienced soldiers. Yet, despite these plausible explanations and clear historical parallels, no concrete evidence supports any particular theory regarding Cambyses' army. No remains, weapons, or equipment have ever surfaced, leaving historians still puzzled. Could there still be a simpler explanation hidden beneath the shifting sands, quietly waiting to be discovered? Until evidence emerges, the fate of the lost army remains an intriguing puzzle, forever awaiting answers beneath Egypt's shifting sands. Envision a boundless desert panorama extending softly toward the horizon below a pristine, limitless sky. Southern Peru's arid plains, apparently vacant and unremarkable, conceal a silent yet captivating secret that has perplexed historians, archaeologists, and voyagers for generations. From ground elevation, there exists nothing especially uncommon about these desert sands, merely kilometers of sun-scorched earth and dispersed stones. However, from the sky overhead, something phenomenal materializes. Immense, meticulously engraved geoglyphs incised profoundly into the terrain. Colossal images that create striking silhouettes of creatures, avian species, arachnids, primates, and even cryptic human-like forms. These are the renowned Nazca Lines, vast illustrations fashioned by ancient hands. Their authentic forms are completely perceptible solely from great altitude. Revealed by modern sight less than a century past, they persist among the most fascinating historical mysteries ever exposed. Spanning across hundreds of square kilometers, the lines create exact geometric arrangements, elaborate animals, and human-esque figures that mutely gaze upward from the desert sands. Who fashioned these gigantic designs? And more significantly, why would antique individuals expend such exertion crafting images optimally observed from high above when nobody during that era could perceive them distinctly? Was it purely ritualistic, or did they fulfill a more functional intention, perhaps linked to astronomy or cultivation? And why are certain figures so bizarre and cryptic, seeming almost supernatural? As we plunge deeper into this absorbing puzzle, we will investigate these enthralling queries and uncover the intriguing theories and discoveries encircling the Nazca Lines. Could ancient people have possessed inspirations or techniques we have yet to entirely comprehend? Let us ascertain collectively. Approximately 2,000 years ago, within the dry coastal plains of southern Peru, a remarkable civilization recognized as the Nazca established their dwelling. They were not conquerors like the Persians, nor did they erect grand palaces or enormous pyramids. Yet, their accomplishments were equally fascinating and mysterious within their own domain. The Nazca civilization prospered from roughly 100 years before the Common Era to 800 years of the Common Era. And despite their demanding desert surroundings, they formulated innovative methods that permitted them not merely to endure, but to flourish. Their secret resided within a remarkable network of subterranean aqueducts termed puquios. These ingenious systems comprised carefully constructed spiral wells and underground canals engineered to direct valuable groundwater toward their harvests, enabling agriculture within one of the driest locales on the planet. It is a clear testimony to the Nazca people's inventiveness and resilience. The Nazca people were also recognized for their exceptional artistry and craftsmanship evident distinctly within their detailed pottery, textiles, and adornments. However, their most celebrated creations were something entirely different. Massive illustrations etched directly upon the desert surface. Identified today as the Nazca Lines, these geoglyphs incorporated various animals such as hummingbirds, monkeys, and spiders alongside intricate geometric patterns and figures. Their construction demonstrated not solely artistic aptitude, but remarkable precision and strategizing, as many of the shapes could only be valued fully from overhead. Unlike other ancient societies, the Nazca abandoned no written records, rendering it particularly challenging for archaeologists to entirely comprehend their culture and motivations. The majority of our contemporary understanding originates from artifacts and archaeological investigation, assembling a portrait of a populace who discovered innovative methods to thrive within severe circumstances. Their society remains somewhat cryptic, and there persists much that historians do not entirely grasp. We understand they participated in ceremonial rites, possibly connected to fertility or precipitation. Yet precisely how the Nazca perceived their world and what impelled them to create their monumental geoglyphs stay compelling puzzles to this day. To genuinely comprehend the Nazca, we must meticulously examine their remarkable legacy. From the intricate espuquios that maintained life to the enigmatic lines that still attract thousands of investigators and tourists annually. It was not until centuries afterward, during the early 20th century, that modern sight would finally grasp the complete scope of the Nazca people's remarkable creations. In fact, prior to the 1920s, these massive geoglyphs stayed mostly unfamiliar, concealed in plain view amidst the vast and desolate landscape of southern Peru. From ground level, these cryptic patterns manifested as little beyond arbitrary lines and shallow furrows engraved across the desert surface. Travelers and inhabitants traversed over them innumerable occasions without ever realizing their authentic form. Yet all of that transformed with the dawn of aviation. During the late 1920s and early 1930s, commercial pilots started traversing the skies above southern Peru. And it was from this aerial perspective that they observed something astounding. Aviators flying above the Nazca Desert started noticing distinct, carefully crafted shapes emerging clearly from the sands far underneath. Perfectly proportioned outlines of creatures, insects, birds, and geometric arrangements. Imagine the instant those pilots, peering downward from their small aircrafts, recognized these were not arbitrary markings whatsoever. They were deliberate, intricate designs, enormous in scale, and distinctly visible solely from great altitude. Intrigued by this revelation, archaeologists and investigators rapidly became interested. Among the earliest was American historian Paul Kosak, who visited Nazca during the 1930s to examine ancient irrigation systems. While observing the lines from a hillside throughout sunset upon the winter solstice, Kosak noticed that one of the straight lines aligned precisely with the descending sun, prompting him to proclaim Nazca the largest astronomy volume globally. Kosak's revelations attracted widespread consideration, yet it was his assistant, Maria Ricci, a German mathematician and archaeologist, who would dedicate her entire existence to unlocking the Nazca Lines' secrets. Maria Ricci relocated to Peru and devoted decades painstakingly mapping, measuring, and documenting each line and shape she could locate. Utilizing simple instruments like measuring tapes, ladders, and basic surveying equipment, she tirelessly examined the figures' precise geometry, astronomical alignments, and potential cultural importance. Ricci hypothesized that the Nazca Lines functioned as an immense astronomical calendar, carefully indicating significant solar and lunar occurrences vital for agricultural and ceremonial intentions. Her meticulous labor not only elevated global consciousness, but also assisted in preserving the lines from potential devastation. Owing to Maria Ricci's lifelong advocacy, the Nazca Lines became protected, attracting archaeological interest and tourism. Yet, despite her monumental endeavors, numerous queries stayed unanswered. While astronomical and calendrical functions seemed plausible, not each shape or line distinctly corresponded with celestial events. Why did the Nazca people fashion giant monkeys, spiders, and birds visible solely from the sky? And how precisely did the Nazca people create these remarkable geoglyphs? After all, These enormous designs were crafted more than a millennium before humans possessed the capability to observe the landscape from overhead. Without aircraft, drones, or satellites, how could the Nazca have precisely carved images that are fully appreciated solely from elevated within the sky? The process the Nazca people employed was, at minimum in theory, astonishingly straightforward. The Nazca Desert possesses a unique geological composition, a stratum of dark oxidized stones overlaying a considerably lighter sandy soil beneath. By carefully eliminating this darker surface stratum, the Nazca revealed the brighter, lighter-hued earth underneath, generating stark contrasts and distinct lines visible from overhead. It was a remarkably clever application of natural substances. No paints, no pigments, just simple yet carefully controlled excavation. Yet simple excavation does not entirely clarify the complexity and scale of these figures. The Nazca lines are astonishingly precise lines extending hundreds or even thousands of meters, devoid of any noticeable errors or deviations. They incorporate intricate representations of animals like the hummingbird, spider, monkey, and condor, each carefully proportioned and symmetrical. To position this into perspective, certain lines measure up to 9 kilometers long, preserving perfect straightness, an accomplishment incredibly demanding even with contemporary technology. Could the Nazca people authentically have fashioned these designs without the ability to distinctly perceive them from overhead? Modern investigators have attempted to resolve this puzzle through experimental archaeology, utilizing methods and tools believed accessible to the ancient Nazca. One notable experiment was conducted by researcher Joe Nickel, who carefully recreated one of the Nazca images upon a smaller scale. Employing solely basic surveying tools, sticks, ropes, and simple measurement techniques, Nickel demonstrated that precise shapes were attainable from the ground. Yet his experiments also emphasized the immense difficulty and time required. Even creating miniature replicas demanded meticulous planning, clear communication, and painstaking execution. Imagine scaling that process upward, covering hundreds of meters of desert, coordinating teams of laborers without radios, aerial perspective, or advanced surveying instruments, simply marking the ground distinctly enough to preserve perfect symmetry and alignment appears nearly impossible. Moreover, unlike contemporary experiments, the original Nazca artisans abandoned no indications of significant mistakes, corrections, or accidental deviations. Their original geoglyphs remain astonishingly accurate. This exceptional precision leads investigators to question the methods utilized. Did the Nazca perhaps employ observational points such as distant hills or towers to observe their work from an elevated perspective? Could they have employed primitive measurement systems, complex mathematics, or astronomical observations to guide their designs with such precision? These remain intriguing queries. Ever since their revelation during the early 20th century, investigators have proposed several compelling theories to clarify the purpose behind the Nazca lines. Given the sheer scale, complexity, and precision of these geoglyphs, it appears evident that the Nazca people possessed a clear and deliberate rationale for creating these immense figures. Over time, archaeologists and historians have meticulously explored and assessed the most prominent explanations, concentrating chiefly upon 3 key theories: astronomical alignment, religious ceremonies, and symbolic communication. One of the earliest and most extensively investigated theories was presented by the German archaeologist and mathematician Maria Riesch. Ricci devoted much of her existence to meticulously examining and mapping the Nazca lines, suggesting that these giant figures functioned primarily as astronomical calendars. Her research demonstrated that certain lines and shapes corresponded intimately with celestial occurrences such as solstices and equinoxes. For instance, several lengthy straight lines distinctly align with sunrise positions during significant astronomical dates, indicating they may have been employed as calendars or guides for agricultural and seasonal rituals. Raichi's rigorous documentation and measurements remain valuable references for archaeologists and astronomers currently. Nevertheless, while the astronomical theory is persuasive, certain investigators argue it does not entirely clarify the complex animal and plant figures prominently depicted among the lines. These intricate shapes, incorporating the hummingbird, spider, monkey, and condor, do not distinctly align with astronomical bodies or celestial events. This has led other scholars to propose that the Nazca Lines held predominantly religious or ceremonial significance. Archaeologist Johann Reinhard is among those who strongly advocate this interpretation. Reinhard suggests the geoglyphs were likely a portion of ceremonial processions or rituals associated with water and fertility, both critical concerns within the arid environment of southern Peru. Within this viewpoint, the Nazca people may have believed that creating these large symbolic figures could assist in attracting rainfall or communicating with their deities and spirits. Supporting this theory, many geoglyphs appear to point directly toward mountain sources of water, where archaeological evidence indicates ancient ritual activity and ceremonial offerings transpired. Reinhard's extensive fieldwork within the Nazca region, combined with studies of local indigenous traditions, has reinforced this interpretation significantly. A third popular theory proposes that the Nazca Lines functioned as symbolic messages or communication to deities or ancestral spirits. According to this perspective, the sheer size and scale of the geoglyphs, engineered to be observed distinctly solely from overhead, may have been intended for the eyes of gods themselves. This interpretation suggests the Nazca people fashioned these images as large-scale spiritual offerings or messages to higher beings believed to dwell within the sky or upon nearby sacred mountains. However, while intriguing, there exists limited direct archaeological evidence confirming that the Nazca specifically designed their lines for supernatural beings or higher powers. Despite the compelling nature of each theory, archaeological evidence supporting any singular interpretation remains inconclusive. No written records from the Nazca culture survive, and their precise motivations stay open to debate. Modern archaeological techniques such as ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and digital analysis have furnished greater comprehension of the geoglyphs' layouts and construction techniques, but have yet to yield definitive explanations regarding their purpose. Further complicating interpretation is the reality that the Nazca civilization likely existed across several centuries, suggesting the line's meanings may have shifted over time. Rather than serving a singular purpose, the Nazca Lines could have simultaneously fulfilled multiple functions: astronomical markers, ceremonial pathways, and symbolic communication. Most contemporary investigators incline toward the belief that these various theories are not mutually exclusive and that multiple purposes could have coexisted. In conclusion, although significant research and exploration have been dedicated to comprehending the Nazca Lines' purpose, a definitive explanation stays elusive. The astronomical theories presented by Maria Raichi, ceremonial interpretations championed by Johann Reinhard, and broader theories of spiritual or symbolic communication each offer valuable perspectives. Still, with current evidence, no singular theory furnishes a complete answer. Within recent decades, the mystery of the Nazca Lines has entered a remarkable new phase propelled by significant advancements in archaeological technology. Modern investigators have shifted from traditional on-the-ground methods to state-of-the-art techniques that have dramatically expanded our comprehension of the Nazca Desert's secrets. One of the most notable breakthroughs transpired through the efforts of a dedicated team from Yamagata University in Japan. Led by archaeologist Masato Sakai, this team conducted extensive research employing drone photography, high-resolution satellite imagery, and advanced image analysis techniques. These technologies have permitted investigators to observe the desert landscape in unprecedented detail, distinctly revealing subtle markings and shapes previously concealed or obscured from traditional aerial surveys. In 2019, the Yamagata University team generated headlines globally when they declared the discovery of over 140 previously unfamiliar geoglyphs. Among these newly identified designs were detailed representations of animals, incorporating llamas, birds, snakes, fish, and humanoid figures. One particularly striking discovery was a human-like figure that resembled an elaborate ceremonial depiction, distinctly distinct in style from those previously known. These finds significantly expanded the known inventory of Nazca geoglyphs, suggesting that many more figures might still await discovery beneath the sand. The discovery process itself demanded meticulous and advanced analytical techniques. The team initially employed high-resolution satellite imagery to scan the desert floor, searching for subtle variations in terrain coloration and patterns. Once potential sites were identified, drones were deployed to capture close-up images from varying angles. These drone images were then carefully analyzed utilizing specialized software engineered to reveal faint shapes and details invisible to the naked eye. The outcome was the identification of numerous previously overlooked geoglyphs. Nevertheless, these remarkable discoveries also introduced new challenges. The newly uncovered geoglyphs, having lain undetected for centuries, were immediately at risk from environmental factors such as erosion, human activity, and altering climate conditions. Consequently, investigators and international preservation bodies rapidly intervened to safeguard these invaluable cultural artifacts. Since 1994, the Nazca Lines have been protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a status that underscores their global significance and encourages international collaboration for preservation. Modern conservation strategies have become more comprehensive, involving measures such as careful visitor management, controlled archaeological excavation, and extensive documentation to ensure the geoglyphs remain intact for future generations. The Yamagata University team's findings were swiftly incorporated into existing preservation frameworks, adding urgency to these ongoing efforts. In addition to preservation, these discoveries offer new opportunities for interpretation. Archaeologists are now meticulously comparing these newly discovered geoglyphs with known cultural symbols and regional archaeological findings, hoping to obtain deeper insights into the Nazca civilization's cultural practices, beliefs, and societal structure. The precision of these figures, their stylistic elements, and their placement across the desert are all carefully examined to uncover potential meanings and purposes. With such astonishing achievements from an ancient culture, it is unsurprising that numerous alternative theories and speculative interpretations regarding the Nazca Lines have gained popularity. While archaeologists generally concur that these remarkable geoglyphs were fashioned by the Nazca people themselves for cultural or ceremonial intentions, others have presented more contentious ideas. One of the most famous proponents of alternative theories was Erich von Däniken, whose best-selling publication, A Chariots of the Gods, popularized what is recognized today as the ancient astronaut theory. Von Däniken asserted that certain ancient artifacts, monuments, and structures incorporating the Nazca Lines furnished evidence of extraterrestrial visitors within humanity's distant past. He argued that the complex and precise designs of the Nazca Lines, visible distinctly solely from high overhead, indicated guidance or direct influence by advanced alien beings. His theory attracted significant public attention during the 1960s and 1970s, prompting widespread curiosity and speculation. Supporters of von Däniken's theory indicate specific Nazca figures such as the humanoid-shaped geoglyph recognized popularly as the astronaut as evidence that the Nazca may have encountered or depicted extraterrestrial beings. The distinctive appearance of this figure with its large eyes and humanoid form has become iconic within alternative historical circles. These proponents often argue that the Nazca people, lacking aerial capabilities, could not have designed figures of such precision and scale without external assistance. Nevertheless, mainstream archaeologists and investigators distinctly emphasize that there exists no solid evidence supporting claims of extraterrestrial contact or influence. Scholars point out that many ancient cultures created complex designs and structures devoid of modern equipment or aerial perspectives. Experiments conducted by investigators such as Joe Nickel demonstrate distinctly that creating the Nazca geoglyphs utilizing ancient surveying techniques was challenging yet entirely achievable by human hands alone. Further studies have demonstrated that the Nazca possessed advanced skills in geometry, mathematics, and astronomy, permitting them to create accurate large-scale designs through careful planning and ground-level measurements. Many geoglyphs align intimately with astronomical events such as solstices and equinoxes, reinforcing interpretations centered upon ceremonial or astronomical functions rather than extraterrestrial involvement. Additionally, the astronaut figure, one frequently highlighted within alternative theories, has been examined by archaeologists who suggest it most likely depicts a shaman or deity donning ceremonial attire consistent with known iconography from the region. Its appearance, while intriguing, aligns distinctly with symbolic representations common within Nazca culture and nearby Andean civilizations. Despite contemporary technology and exploration, the authentic meaning and method behind the Nazca Lines remain concealed beneath the sands. Perhaps their secrets are intended to stay undiscovered, silently preserved by the desert itself. What do you think? Let me know within the comments. Subscribe to Forbidden Fathoms for additional intriguing ancient mysteries, and be certain to examine our other videos for more ancient mysteries. Until next time, remain inquisitive and remain secure.